The clinical definition of generalized anxiety is when you experience worry more often than not for at least 6 months. That is difficult to control. And there's usually some physical symptoms that go along with that, like muscle tension, sweating, heat, chill sensations, even like grinding your teeth, that kind of thing. And then there's, like the kind of daily anxiety that all of us tend to experience that's not bad or good, but can actually be like motivating towards behavior. So that would be like anxiety about a test. That's going to motivate me to study. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely different than what we would call as like anxiety that is getting in the way of your functioning. So the difference between your kind of normal day-to-day little anxieties or stressors and an anxiety disorder would be the disorder interferes with your life. It gets in the way of your functioning. That means it could get in the way of your sleep, eating, it could get in the way of work, it could get in the way of your studies, it could get in the way of your relationships. So if it's getting in the way of you living your life and you really feeling like you're not being able to function because of it, then I would say that's when you would probably need to seek help, talk to a professional, and sometimes talk therapy is enough to figure out some behaviors that you can do to work with the anxiety, and sometimes medication is needed, and usually the two combined, the talk therapy and the medication, people see the best results. So the first coping mechanism that I would say, and really all of these you can use for really any kind of dysregulation, whether that's anxiety, anger, extreme sadness or depression. When you're feeling really high levels of dysregulation, these are things that you can do. The first one is called the T.I.P skill. Now this is going to be a DBT or dialectical behavior skill, and you would use this if you felt like the emotion was so extreme, was so intense that you could not do anything else. You could not do any higher level skill. So like you couldn't even go for a walk. The T stands for tipping the temperature. Using really cold temperatures helps to slow down our heart rate. And if you do kind of the extreme of T.I.P, which would be to fill up a sink or a bowl with ice cold water, ice cubes floating in it, and you're going to dunk your face in the water. This triggers what's called the dive response. That slows down your heart rate. It increases blood flow to your heart and to your brain, which then regulates your emotions. It's not a pleasant skill, it doesn't feel good, and it really works. The I in T.I.P stands for intense exercise. This is particularly helpful for anger. So this is going to be like a short burst of really intense cardio exercise to get your heart rate up, your blood pumping. So this could be like running up and down a flight of stairs, jumping jacks, sprinting, crunches, anything like that. And that would be like 5 to 20 minutes of intense exercise. So it's different than like working out. One of the P's in T.I.P stands for paced breathing. So that's going to be counting your breaths and making sure that your exhales last longer than your inhales. Typically, when we're feeling really anxious, our inhales are longer than our exhales, and that can really cause us to start hyperventilating. So if we really try to focus on our breath and make sure that, like, if I breathe in for a count of 4, then I want to make sure I'm breathing out for a count of 5, 6, or 7, etc. Because that really can slow down our heart rate and get us more regulated. And then the second P for T.I.P is going to be the progressive muscle relaxation. So that's going to be the tensing and releasing of each muscle group in your body paired with our breath. So for example, if I breathe in, I'm going to curl my toes, and then on the exhale, I'm going to relax my toes. And then I'd move up into my calves. I breathe in, tense my calves, and then release my calves on the exhale. And I would do that from my toes all the way up to my head, and then I would go back down. And you can do that over and over until you start to feel some relief from the anxiety. That's also a really good skill to help us sleep. Typically, people will report that anxiety becomes pretty apparent at night when it's time to lay down and go to bed. And that's because that's usually the first time during the day that we've stopped to pause. And that's when the anxiety kind of like floods. So the paired muscle relaxation, or the progressive muscle relaxation, it's also called, is a really good skill to help for sleep as well. Then there's all kinds of like grounding techniques. So if you're feeling really like kind of out of control, out of your body, grounding techniques could be something as simple as like digging your heels into the ground and just noticing that sensation, or just feeling your butt in your seat, noticing that sensation. Doing something like a really typical one is like noticing or listing 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. That's a really good grounding technique. Box breathing is another one where you breathe in, you hold, breathe out, and hold. It's kind of like paced breathing as well. Any kind of mindfulness techniques where you're kind of like describing things in your environment, narrating your experience, labeling thoughts, labeling emotions, that can be really regulating. And then any kind of self-soothing. So like, smelling an essential oil that you really like, looking at pictures that are really soothing to you, anything like that that really kind of induces that feeling of calm. And then, of course, there's all the distracting skills that you could use. So distracting yourself by watching a scary movie, listening to a funny comedian, listening to a podcast, going for a walk, taking a bath, anything that's really going to distract us from the thing that's causing the distress. So I think the take home would be is that everybody experiences anxiety to some degree. It's very normal. And if you feel like it's getting in the way, like I said, of your functioning, then it's totally appropriate to talk to somebody about it. That could be talking to a friend, or it could be talking to a professional. And then if you do end up seeking help and talking to a mental health professional, you're going to get really specific, individualized help. And skills that are going to work for you. It's a lot of trial and error of figuring out the things that do work for you, because not every skill works for every person. But there are plenty of techniques that we can try behaviorally, even without medication, that can really help you cope with anxiety.